Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the May 3rd, 2023 meeting of the Environmental Commission of the Charter Township of the middle of the earth. Call the meeting to order, and I'd like to call for any public remarks at this time. We have a visitor who I've encouraged to come and give us some public remarks on a really interesting topic. Need your name, address, serial number, and place of origin.
I'm Bruce Peffers, 4932 Sioux Way in Okemos. And Roy suggested that I come and talk to you folks about green burial and the efforts that are ongoing in the township right now to try to get green burial option available in the township. First of all, green burial, it just consists of, there's no embalming of the body, there's no liners or vaults that are utilized in the interment, and the containers that are used are biodegradable, such as wicker or a shroud, a cotton shroud, or even a wooden box, an untreated wooden box. There's three flavors of green burial. There's the hybrid, which is what the Williamstown Township is doing right now. It's part of an actual existing cemetery, so it's a section of the cemetery that they're going to set aside and utilize just for green burials, right at the back of one of their conventional cemeteries. The other type is a natural setting, which is simply a non-landscaped area. There's no lawns or anything like that. The interments are put there, and the main maintenance of that area would be like removing invasive species, and just allowing the natural succession of that area to continue forward. The last one is a conservation site, which is where the burial site is actually tied in with a nature preserve. So that area is, it could be prairie, it could be wooded, it could be any type of a landscape, but it's used for burial in certain parts of it. Initially, when I first started getting involved in this, I was hoping for a natural area, perhaps utilizing one of our nature preserves here in the township, or a portion of a nature preserve. I went and spoke with the Land Preservation Advisory Board. I've spoken with the Parks Department, and now I'm talking to you folks. Unfortunately, our land preserves are, they're set aside with certain provisions. So if we were to want to go that route, we would have to set aside or purchase an additional natural area strictly for that type of use. What I think we may be able to do, just to get our foot in the door initially, would be to utilize a portion of the cemetery on Mount Hope, Glenview. And we can, there's one section of that right now that is not available to purchase plots in. There's actually, they're slated to put a columbarium in there, which is, if you don't know what that is, it's a building that houses urns of ashes. However, columbariums, most of them are relatively small. They don't really take a lot of space up. And it would not be difficult to put a columbarium in like a corner of that section and then have the rest of the section available for green burials. What we would have to do, and what I'm probably going to end up doing, is going to the township board and having the regulations changed. Right now, there's no burials allowed in that cemetery without a cement vault. So we would need to get that changed, at least for that section. And that's about as far along as we've gotten. There's definitely interest in the township. There's people that have been contacting Leroy and myself that are interested in getting involved. So if you have any additional questions, I'll try to answer them. Oh, one other thing. At the end of January, Gabby Meyer did a great presentation at the Hazlet High School that is available on the township YouTube channel. She knows a lot more about green burials than I do. And if you haven't watched that, I would encourage you to take a look at that. It's very interesting and very detailed.
Thank you for coming to visit with us tonight. If staff can make sure that we have the link to that YouTube in our packets next time or before, that would allow us to research a little bit further. And if we want to have that as an agenda item on a future meeting, we can certainly do that. I can imagine even there being a place in our climate sustainability plan. I mean, you do save a lot of energy. So thanks again for coming to visit tonight.
Sure. The township is going through the master plan right now and doing, in large part, 2 discussions on the green dialogues on Wednesday morning. Public comments, I guess, green burial is like #1 on the master plan feedback. So that's another little interesting tidbit. All right, thank you. You're welcome to stick around, but not required. All right, move along to our agenda for this evening. Did anybody have any comments, corrections, changes to the agenda as distributed?
Going once, going twice.
I
Yep.
had one, oh, not the agenda, sorry, no, nothing on the agenda.
Very well. Our agenda is approved, and we'll move on to the minutes. What do you got?
Yes, it looked, we have an incomplete sentence about wanting to talk about the food section. Would be welcome at the next meeting. It's under healthy food systems, under climate sustainability plan. So I'm just missing a word there.
I've got that one, and I'll give this to staff afterwards. Anything else?
No, that was the only one I had. Looks like you had a
Yeah, I got a whole bunch, but you go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got a couple of small ones too. On the first page, under Environmental Stewardship Awards, just prior to the last two sentences, there's a word commissioners out there that's just kind of all by itself.
It's an orphan commissioner.
Yeah, probably
We don't
could
often
just
call on them.
be eliminated. I think maybe the intent originally was commissioners unanimously approved, but it's not needed since the EC unanimously approved. And then one other minor one on the very last page under staff update. It said that, and talking about Leroy here, second sentence, he will move the service center. I think that's intended to mean he will move to the service center.
I'm sure they're all very moved to have him there. Yeah.
That's all I had.
I got a few more. Anybody else want to take a shot? I read these real carefully. I love it. Environmental Stewardship Awards, the first sentence, Land Stewardship Coordinator Emma Campbell submitted an ESA nomination. Fourth sentence, Sarver suggested we solicit nominations at the beginning of each year. New business. The parenthetical at the end of the new business is nice update. It's not part of the minutes. We don't get to update you can't include material that happened after the meeting. I've got these all written down. We'll be happy to share them with staff. Thank you. Any other corrections, additions, deletions? Without objection, the minutes are approved as amended. Moving on to new business. We may need to delay this portion of our agenda until such time as our awardee is present.
Yeah, that would be probably smart.
Yeah. In honorarium. Then moving on to other new business. Kind of picking up, if I may, from the minutes of the last meeting and some discussions I've had since then, it seems like there's scope for looking closely at sort of processes and procedures in our new role as having line items. The board has been very generous to supply us with funds in a kind of a broad mandate and is allowing us to decide how to disperse those funds. And that's pretty new. And it feels to me like we're evolving both on the green grant side in terms of getting to where we're having more applications than we can fund and having to make those hard decisions. And some of the sort of disbursement sides of, how long do you have to spend money and who presents receipts to whom and at what point do you have a ribbon cutting kind of thing. And at the same time with the wetland education program, where we have dollars allocated and we're trying to develop and disseminate information, but it seems like there's could be more clarity about how to actually get the stuff in the hands of folks it's intended for. And that's just, I think, a matter of kind of procedures within the township for, okay, now this decision, what's the deadline, who signs off on what, and to make sure it happens. So I wanted to put that on the table and get just sort of informal feedback from the rest of the commission about the value or ideas or how to go about that. Anna.
I would almost like and there may be an answer to this part, but I'd almost like to back it up a little bit more for context in terms of how that money gets to the environmental, like how do we get those line items? Like, do we make certain requests from the board? I mean, is there a process for that, or how have we gotten to where we are now?
That's a great point. That's a great point. Those of us who have sort of participated since the time that started happening have kind of watched it happen, and it should be more transparent. How we, is it our job to make a request? And what would that request look like? And that would be very useful as well. As long as there's dollars passing through, I think the more clear understanding and transparency, really the better.
I could speak a little to that. Sure. So when the board is being asked for funds, it happens at the time of budget, right? So the time that the budget's being developed and before the budget is passed by the board is when that ask would want to come in. So in the past, are we on 3 years? 3 years of green grants and wetlands. I made the ask during budget discussions, I suppose, and then it was approved by the board. So there's a little bit of timing there. And then generally you either need a staff and or a board member to make that ask for you.
Okay.
Maybe
Okay.
the chair.
I think that's helpful, and I do remember having some of those conversations at these meetings. I guess what I don't necessarily remember, and maybe we want to wrap up into, I mean, I certainly agree with the, like, I think it's great we have money for green grants and for the wetlands. And I guess my impression, and I don't know how accurate this is because it was months ago, is that, it was just like we had these discussions, that's what's happened in the past, and we're like, okay, let's do that. And I almost wonder whether there's a process of like prioritization within the Environmental Commission of like what are the, what are the possibilities, like what really are our priorities that we want to fund as a whole. And then kind of working through that process into this process. But maybe that is a pin item and we go to the working through what to do with what we have already first.
I think what you're saying makes an awful lot of sense, especially from the standpoint of doing forward planning. If we know when that budget meeting is going to happen and we want to make sure that we, on our agenda, are thinking through our priorities for the next year and how would we like to address the board in terms of funding those priorities, that makes a lot of sense. And actually, the rest of it makes less sense without that piece, so thank you.
It's new, we're revising, improving process.
That's how it works, right?
Yeah, and my sense is that the way the township board does its budgeting varies over time. And, the way they might have done it 10 years ago might not be the way it's happening these days. It feels to me like there's a fairly rigorous and very transparent process that happens at the township board for all of those discussions. And they're grueling because there's thousands of line items.
I'm sure.
And some of them are non-negotiable. And one thought I had is in terms of how we as a commission decide to go about this, I think we have a few options. One is to have it as sort of a formal discussion item in our next meeting and try to kind of deal with it in that format. Or to have some other maybe working group working on sort of policies and procedures that can meet as a working group and therefore would be available to meet on Zoom. It wouldn't have to be an in-person thing, and that can make it a lot easier to get a group of people together. But maybe the starting point for however we do that is to get just a couple of bullets from how does the budget process work at the township level? How have we been doing? What is the current evolution of the green grant process, and how has the wetland education prioritization and spending bits and process been done? One page each, bullets, to give a group something to look at and kind of work over? Does that seem doable?
I think so, yeah. And I think as of now, I think, Leroy, correct me if I'm wrong, the Green Grants Committee is Courtney and me and you, right? That's the three of us. So the three of us could get together and just kind of talk about the process and clarify some things and come up with a one-pager or less.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. I have had some specifics from Commissioner Grissetti about the wetland education program and where some of the challenge points have been. And so in her absence, I'm going to volunteer her to develop that for the wetland education team with help from her group. So, yes, sir.
Just 2 points. I think a lot of the ideas that become funded started in the committee level or in the Green Dialogue. So the food committee, for example, might come up with an ask for something or a vision for. And so I think it starts before the budget process with one individual or a group of individuals with a shared vision. And so the possibilities are endless. And I think the other point I wanted to make is that the board has been very supportive of our environmental initiative. So it does make sense for us to kind of expand this vision of possibilities while we're thinking about procedures.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, because I mean, quite frankly, that is what came to mind, is like, well, there are things in, the food group that where, we are very fortunate to have staff time that ends up getting, with the market manager that goes toward, that ends up getting used towards some of the initiatives within the, the food group. But certainly there would be other items that I could see requesting some additional funding. But I don't know that it was totally like, the opportunity to do that was totally transparent of like how that might work, thinking back on it. So it's good to think through what that process might look like in the future.
Does the green team have resources other than staff time?
Well, I was just, funny you should mention that, because I was just pondering that, because as I think most of you are aware, we just had our major spring event, and we do have resources coming in primarily from sponsors. So maybe there needs to be some consideration about how all that plays into this as well.
Is it a financial outlay for the township, or is it a revenue generator?
I'm going to defer to Leroy on that, but I think it's both to a certain extent. I think there is some funds that are expended from the township, but we do collect donations at the event, and some of the items that are recycled, there is a fee to recycle those. But other than that,
It's pretty much a break even, but my staff time has been covered. That's one of the reasons I was hired, is to work on green team type of initiatives, and it's expanded beyond that. But yeah, besides my time, a lot of the expenses for electronics recycling is probably the biggest one, for example. That comes from our sponsors and fees and donations that the public provides.
Yeah, I've got maybe a couple questions for Courtney about the budgeting process and with the township. I guess my first question is the normal annual budgeting. If we think in terms of committees thinking about potential financial support, when should they start talking about that? Is that something like early fall or?
Thank you for asking. I was just looking it up, John, to see when
Yeah.
it was on the agenda, but I think what would be best if I reach out to Deputy Manager Opsimer and ask them.
Yeah.
Can you
okay.
give us a breakdown of if we were going to start having these discussions and we wanted to make an ask, how would that look and what timing would that have? Does that sound okay?
Yeah, my second question is more, I know it makes sense to do it during the normal budgeting process, but if the green team has this brilliant idea in the middle of the year, is there some flexibility in the budget that they shouldn't hesitate to maybe coming before the Environmental Commission and Township Board and asking for whatever, a modest amount of money to do X? Or is that, doesn't work too well?
So it's interesting you say that too. You're full of ideas. I'll have to double check. If in fact you want to add a line item,
Yes.
that might be, that's going to be different than amending a line item, right? So for example, we may need more funding to fund all of our green grants.
Oh, right. That's a good
fully.
example, right.
And
Yeah.
so last night at our board meeting, Manager Walsh had watched our last environmental commission, in all his spare time, and recognized that we may be coming to him with an ask. So if there's already a line item, then it's really just an ask for an amendment, which just working in budgets in another area, that's much easier than adding a line item.
Okay.
But given that, it might be something, and we can talk to management too, but it might be something where we leave the budget line open, right? And then we have project plans or something like that, so that it's the Environmental Commission. And then we can choose what to use those funds for, but we'd have to report that back, of course. And I'm speaking just like, this is kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah, well, and that would give us more flexibility if there was an Environmental Commission line item, right? Because you may not spend as much on wetland education, and those dollars then could be used for green grants or whatever.
Yep.
So that could be maybe helpful.
It might be, yeah, to keep it vague, but we would have to present them with, like you were mentioning, Bill, like a plan and maybe a tracking of,
Yeah.
what is the original ask? And then that way we can, like you said, talk about our policy priorities, determine what we think we might need for the year. If we can put it in one line item, then if something comes up in between, as a commission, I would think we could make that amendment. But I will ask all those questions.
Well, now I've got thoughts of donations in my mind. Right, we don't solicit, as far as I know, for the environmental, we don't solicit donations, in my recollection, but there's no reason we couldn't. And apparently we do at some events, so we have that ability to solicit donations. I'm sure the farmer's market gets donations all the time. Sure, they have a tip jar that you can, right?
I don't know. I don't know about that.
I mean, what we really need is an endowment. Right?
An endowment, wow.
Well, I mean, if we're talking broadly about funding, that's the other question is, are there grants available for the work that we do that the town, I don't know how that, well, I guess maybe that's another question is how does that work? Are we able to seek grants for some of the work we do and partner, like as the township or to partner with the township?
As Courtney was saying, the Parks Department is spectacularly successful at getting matching grants for everything we do. And our Department of Public Works also has got some chops in that field.
Okay.
Other departments don't necessarily go after grants much, but there are people in the township who are really good at it.
But I think
The recycling center reconstruction was a grant proposal,
Okay.
and they hired a professional consulting firm to help develop the proposal, so they had proper engineered drawings of what they were going to build. We definitely could consider going after grant monies for, there's grant money out there for solar energy work, there's all sorts of stuff out there that, Part 115 is going to start putting money into people's coffers, and so.
Well, and we've been looking at Eagle grants in terms of some of the in the food team work, so.
I hear discussion of next cycle seems to be the place where people are heading towards these days, and I know that staff is following closely on that.
Maybe not as much as the food team lately, but yeah, anything is possible. I mean, you're only limited by your imagination.
well then. I'm like, that's great. I know.
Get into dangerous territory.
Yeah, I think some of the Part 115 funding is going through the next cycle process too, or has been in the early part of the funding for those recycling activities. So.
My sense is that the bulk of that program is to create updated county-level plans, and in many cases, counties are being encouraged to work together, and we would be part of a tri-county. Is that your understanding at the moment?
If that's what the county decides, I don't know if that decision has been made yet, but yeah, they are encouraging counties to go together, but they don't have to. I mean, it's really up to each county whether they want to develop their own plan or go on a regional basis. But there is some financial incentives to do a regional plan. I don't know if those decisions have been made yet because they're very early in the process at this point.
Courtney, is that something that's got the attention of the township board yet? The Part 115 County Solid Waste Management Plan?
I have not seen that on an agenda or nor discussion.
Right. Okay. So my request is going to be for those pieces of information to come in, what, 2 weeks? Is that a reasonable time to pull that kind of information together? And that way, if some group can convene on it between now and our next meeting, then we can get some progress forward. And I think probably if, when we do have those discussions, I'm going to delegate that authority to the vice chair, just because I think a chair making up their own rules is a bad idea. Let's see. Where are we now? Any other new business? Moving on to old business. Any updates on the climate sustainability plan? Anybody would like to offer at this time?
Well, at some point, I would like to talk about the food system section, and I know we brought that up at the last meeting, and there was some comment about wanting that to be included in the packet so people can review before the meeting for it to be a more productive discussion. I don't, if I'm remembering that accurately. So I'm wondering I'm happy to talk about it now and provide an overview and people to provide any input, or if we want to table it for next month, and if Leroy could put it in the, put the most updated section in the packet for people to review, or, in a PDF. Mm-hmm. I'm happy to do either way.
I would appreciate personally having it in the PDF so that it's portable. I can bring it with me. I can mark it up. And I know we always have the location of the whole plan, but having my own kind of marked up, scribbled on copy helps me a lot. So having that in the packet, I think, makes sense. And then also anybody in the public can get right to the section that we're talking about, and it'll be on camera and all that, or on the screens, as it were. I think that'll be a much more productive discussion. Okay. And we'll make that our main agenda item for next meeting. Thank you. Old business. I did notice in the minutes some discussion of the summer interns availability, and was curious if we have heard any more about that. Summer's coming up quick, people. I know interns are finishing their school things before they start interning, hopefully with a breather in between.
Yeah.
Speaking of graduation, Anthony Fauci is talking on Friday at MSU.
We haven't heard anything on the intern that's going to be working on a variety of other projects with the township that Manager Walsh mentioned. But I think his schedule is still a little bit up in the air. But we could ask that he meet with us in the future if he does have additional time available. We do have another student through the Graham Sustainability Institute that will be working on a lake healthy improvement initiative or outreach initiative, and he will be starting probably later this month, early next month. His name is Sam Fleckenstein, and he'll be working largely remotely, but help promote lake healthy landscaping and some of the things that the wetland education team has also been promoting, native pollinator gardens, rain gardens, things like that. So not a lot to report.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Another piece of old business I was curious about, well, and actually kind of another, I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, but edit to the minutes, is Commissioner Diedrich mentioned potentially having something to present at this meeting. I see that he's not present, but I was wondering if that was something we wanted to talk about at the next meeting. He was mentioning an evaluation of climate action plans that he was completing. And that's why it also ties into another edit, is because then it has the make comments and review latest version, but that is the climate sustainability plan. So I think we want to drop that down a line, because those aren't actually related, at the very bottom of the minutes.
Right. The very bottom of that first page.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's an agenda item for the next meeting, or if somebody wants, I mean, I guess first, do we want that to be an agenda item for the next meeting? And if so, maybe staff can follow up and see if that's still an option.
Personally, I'm very interested. I know that one of our stumbling blocks is going to be formatting and sort of commensurate sections. And I think it helps me to see how other folks have structured their documents, because I immediately see, I like that, I don't like that. I think is very worthwhile. So I was very much looking forward to that, and also disappointed that the link didn't take me to a version that I could, but I was actually gonna be really surprised if it was live.
Yeah.
If he's was he doing that for the state of Michigan or in the state of? He's on my contract by the state, right?
I think
Yeah, I would-
for the state.
Do you think?
I think it's for the state.
All right,
I'm not sure.
all right. We'll stop revising in a minute, promise. Any other old business? Hearing none, we'll move to reports and announcements. Committees, teams, Earth Club staff, liaisons. Who's got something they want to share?
I can share about Earth Club.
Please.
We had a bake sale at school, a bake and plant sale. So we sold a bunch of different plants that we have in the greenhouse that we propagated. And then we sold those at both lunches, and then a bunch of baked goods that our members made. And we made a little over $200. So that was very good, very beneficial. It'll mainly go towards the greenhouse and like upkeep, and just keep improving on that. And then I am graduating soon, so my co-president is going to take over, and then we have my last meeting is next week, and then I think they might meet like one more time, and then it will be on pause until next year for the school. So, yeah.
Well, congratulations on graduating. Well, in the future. As you were talking, I was curious if you are aware of any connection now or in the past between the Earth Club and say the Student Organic Farm at MSU.
I do not know anything about that. I can definitely look into that.
It might be worth looking into. They just got a new farm manager and they're getting some new facilities, so it'll be a real busy time for a while. But
Yeah.
since it's so nearby and they're kind of a scale up from the greenhouses at the high school, that might be fun.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. Thank you, I'll look into that.
Also, the guy who gives the tours of the worm composting at MSU is a real hoot. If you can
Okay.
get Sean, you'll have a good day. Any other? Oh, yeah. Well, let's if we could give the fellow a chance to catch his breath, and we'll finish up on any other liaison reports. Courtney, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Other than the Green Grants news, that was great. Another thing I just wanted to bring up, and I don't know if anybody's been apprised yet, but we're putting together a training for all boards and commissions on Opens Meetings Acts and all the things we are supposed to know what we're doing, and we're all new and transition and we've never really been trained. So just to put you on aware that will be coming out. They're developing that now. I don't believe it's mandatory by any means, but for me, I know it'll be really helpful. I think they may be talking in a Zoom platform, but I'm not sure. So just know that will be available soon. I went to a MTA conference, a Michigan Township Association conference a couple weeks ago, and I learned how much I don't know. So it was really interesting, and it just made me think, being on other boards and commissions, and we're all a little different. We all have different objectives, and ZBA versus Environmental Commission, very different, right? But we can all at least have an idea of what's supposed to, how meetings are supposed to be run, when are minutes due, closed session minutes, things like that. So.
Robert's Rules 101.
Yeah, I didn't want to say that.
I wonder, when we made the transition from the Zoom meetings to the, back to the public meetings, there was talk about maybe some legislation in Lansing to kind of modify things because it's so restrictive with respect to like members of this commission participating. Have you heard anything? Did anything happen with legislation? Any changes that are coming?
No changes, and from what I understand, they're very adamant about that rule.
Okay.
Because I think it is within the Open Meetings Act, so you'd have to amend the act.
Yeah.
So I haven't heard any more.
Yeah.
And kind of the comments have went down too, so
Right. Yeah. Okay.
we're getting a little more used to coming back in.
Yeah.
But when it comes to like trainings and things like that, of course, because
Yeah.
they're not public
Yeah.
meetings, we can still have flexibility.
Did you have something from Energy?
Yeah, just a couple items. We had our first Solarize meeting and joint one with Williamston and Meridian Township, and there was over 60 people there. They're continuing to get attendees to kind of make a decision to buy solar systems, so they're up to 8 so far. There was 27 proposals sent out, and 8 of them have decided to go ahead with the solar system. So those 8 will all at least get an 8% discount. And there's still time for additional people to kind of make that decision. The second meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, June 13th at 7 o'clock, and this one's going to be a Zoom meeting. And so more specifics about that will be coming out. But that's the second meeting, and then there'll be at least 2 additional meetings this summer. And at the energy team meeting, it was mentioned about the, MSU engineering students have come in and looked at this building and the public safety building. And I think a report from them is coming fairly soon. Leroy may clarify that. Am I correct on that? Should we expect a report from the MSU folks fairly soon?
Yeah, we're hoping to have something by the third Thursday in this month.
Okay.
Which is our next energy team meeting.
Okay, super. Okay, that's it from energy team.
Great. Food.
Well, I can provide in a shortened update from what Val sent in terms of the food compost group. So there was an April 6th meeting, and if anybody, I'll kick it off, and if anybody who attended it wants to chime in, you can. John Crone from the Ingham County Land Bank explained the garden program and the composting operations in Lansing in that meeting. And then Mike Drombowski from Eastside Composting explained his food scrap collection composting business for released a lot from the land bank. And then, let's see, there's some upcoming events with the group. So, let's see, May 4th, which is tomorrow at noon on Zoom. Anyone who is available and wants to attend, Lindsay Walker, Recycling Outreach and Market Development Manager for Emmett County, will explain how they developed their successful food scrap collection and composting operation at the county. So it is on Zoom, so anyone that needs a Zoom link, let me know or let Val know. May 8th, there is a 2 p.m. tour of the anaerobic digester. Yay!
Forward to it.
So also, if you want details about attending that, reach out and they can be provided. May 10th and 11th is the Michigan Recycling Coalition Conference. Someone from the Food to Composting group will be attending that. And then all the way into the future of June 1st, this one seems very exciting to me as well. Homestead, there's a tour of Pear Tree Farm, which is a homestead farm developed over a homestead farm. So they have a number of composting methods to recycling organic matter and nutrients for productive soil with minimal use of anything purchased. So you can see the food to compost closed loop system firsthand. It's generously provided by retired Professor John Birnbaum is providing the tour. And then there will be a brown bag lunch or snack during the question and answer after the event. So save the date, June 1st.
Thank you. John Beerbaum, he's the one who started the worm composting operation at MSU.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, got it moved from the student organic farm over to the recycling center where it's in hoop houses, and Sean does his. Thank you so much for those liaison reports and updates.
Maybe a quick one on Green Team, if I could.
Go ahead.
And those of you who get the Green Gazette have already seen these statistics, but we did have a successful spring recycling event on Earth Day at Chippewa Middle School, and we had over 60 volunteers, over 380 vehicles or households that went through the recycling event and dropped off materials. It included over 1,200 and 500 pounds of metal that were collected, 40 bicycles, nearly 8,000 pounds of latex paint to be recycled, and about 6,400 pounds of office paper were collected on that day. And our next upcoming event is a medicine collection take-back program. We held one of these last year, which was very successful, very popular. That will be taking place at the Farmers Market on May 20th. So something to look forward to. And we have upcoming events each month over the summer, but that's May 20th is the one that's most defined at this point.
Thank you. Sorry, I almost skipped over you there.
That's all right.
All right. In that case, we will move back to item 5, New Business Environmental Stewardship Award. I was very much hoping that Commissioner Grisecki would be with us this evening to offer this resolution.
And since she's not, I will say I'd like to move to adopt this resolution.
Now, you'll notice that last time I just sort of handed the chair to Lorianna without any. And here I'm handing her this resolution. And the way this is, I think, normally done at the board is that we read the whereases and the now therefore,
Generally, but it's not required, but generally we do.
especially when we're thanking somebody for their service.
Yes, I'm happy to read this. So whereas Steve Thomas has been an active steward of both public and private land in Meridian Township for over 15 years, and whereas Steve has served on the Land Preservation Advisory Board since 2020, and whereas Steve has helped restore our local ecosystem by planting native species and removing invasive species, and whereas Steve regularly participates in the Meridian Conservation Corps events, often staying after to strategize and plan new initiatives, and whereas Steve's enthusiasm, knowledge, and commitment have inspired staff and countless volunteers. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Environmental Commission of Charter Township of Meridian, Ingham County, Michigan, as follows. The Environmental Commission of the Charter Township of Meridian, by means of resolution, extends to Steve Thomas grateful thanks for his voluntary and exemplary efforts.
Is there a second? All in favor of that resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And I am going to now bring this over here and show you all how I have no idea how to gracefully
Can you come to the podium?
offer a resolution.
Do we have a photographer?
Yep, they're coming. They just have to switch the camera because they're multitasking.
Great.
So Denisha will be here
Come over
shortly.
here, maybe is this how this happens? Kind of thing?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, we'll get a. Well, it's a pleasure to meet you. People say such wonderful things. I don't expect before.
I don't think we have him. What's your name?
I'm Bill McConnell.
Okay, Steve Thomas. Yeah.
Congratulations and thank you for your.
Three, two, one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. If you have any thoughts you'd like to share with the Environmental Commission, we typically give awardees the opportunity, but not the requirement that they.
Okay, sure. First of all, sorry I was late. A little misunderstanding, but thank you so much. It really is an honor. I've never won an award like this. And it's really lucky that the citizens of this community actually voted to spend their own money to do nothing but preserve land, for their families and the welfare of everyone, and that the community is pretty committed to also taking care of the parklands. So there's it's a great place to work. It's a critical time, that's why you're here. We all know that, and as an ecologist, it's really feels natural to be able to use my background and knowledge to help out in any way I can in the community. So it's my pleasure to do everything I've done, actually. So thank you very much.
If the commission will allow me, if you could put one item at the top of your list that you would hope to see in the top of our climate sustainability plan, what sort of objective, what sort of an action item would you want to see in the township's revised climate sustainability action plan, from your perspective?
Does that, do I need to have a background in what the plan is?
No,
Okay.
no, it's entirely possible that your top priority will already be there, and it's entirely possible it's one that we haven't sufficiently highlighted, so.
It's a tricky one because we're just a microcosm of what's going on everywhere else. But if, I think this is not necessarily the top carbon reduction issue, but what comes to mind is people driving less. And that sounds, you don't want to say something always in the negative, drive less. But what they'd be doing more is walking, biking, spending time at home with family. I know that as the roads have gotten more crowded, and I think it's frustrating for people, and I can tell the way people kind of drive and interact now has gotten a little rougher in the last 10, 15 years. And I think that would be better for everybody. And that takes, that's not an easy thing where you just pull a lever and reduce the amount of time in a car. That's a whole bunch of things going into that,
Great,
So,
thank you.
yeah, it's a good question. Thank you very much.
Is there any other business, since there is no public to make further remarks? Yes.
I usually have a link to my staff update, but I just want to, if you'd like to kind of see what's going on, if you haven't already, it's update-Leroy on your screen there. And I won't go through it right now, but if you go to May 3rd, you can kind of see a few of the other things that are happening in the township.
Super.
So that's all I've got.
Thank you very much. Hearing no other business, we're adjourned.